Welcome, everyone. I'm Carol Lourie, host of the Her Health and Spirit podcast and upcoming summit. Welcome, Shawn.
Thanks for having me.
We're very happy to have you here. So let's talk a little bit about, in your practice, how do you take women from the mundane or the plain level into the spiritual world, and how do you work with them in that way?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's funny in a traditional allopathic practice where you see 30, 40 patients a day, sometimes that's pretty hard because I'm not necessarily in that space. And what I have done to help myself, to help myself be in that space is surround myself with things like art. So I have things around my office that remind me of just like the chakras or certain pieces of art that are just more stimulatory or spiritual. And I'm not talking about, I pick art just basically because I think it looks, nice or it's appealing to me. But I have a tapestry in a couple of my exam rooms that are behind my exam tables that just have the chakras on them. Mm-hmm. And from Western or Eastern Indian medicine, and all that does is it shifts my thinking. So like if I have a patient who comes in for pelvic pain, or this is a good example, I think it's in my book too, is I had a girl come in who was constantly like clearing her throat, and she wore a scarf, and she was constantly like grabbing at her throat, like just kind of itchy and it wasn't something that I picked up on right away. It probably took a visit or two, but I finally said, hey, what's going on with your throat? Thinking, it's probably a virus or something. And she said, I don't know. I'm having a hard time swallowing. I'm having a hard time. Sometimes I'm losing my voice. And I said, well, maybe it's a virus. She's like, well, it's not like my voice is raspy. I literally can't get the words out. And then all of a sudden she started crying. She started bawling. She's probably 7 months pregnant. Well, what happened in speaking to her was that she couldn't swallow and she couldn't speak because her boyfriend at the time was using heroin, and she felt very nervous about bringing a baby into that household. And she knew she had to talk to him about it, but she didn't know how, and so she kept putting it off. So energetically, she had a hard time swallowing. She had a hard time getting her words out, and she was covering her throat, which means she was probably afraid to talk about stuff. And so I told her to bring him the next time, and we all talked about it. And he subsequently went into rehab because he didn't want to be that father either.
Great.
And then she magically stopped wearing the scarves, and things got better. So I think that's a good story of how I at least can tune in to what's going on, because the allopath in me, the regular doctor in me, is thinking, oh, it's just a virus, right?
I was thinking it was a thyroid problem and she needed to have her thyroid checked.
So that's where we go. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think that's But I didn't do $1 million of workup either. Just through having this other way of thinking, really, I was able to help her get to the root of her problem.
When you're seeing 30 to 40 people a day, notice I couldn't even get out the concept of a day, because that's how many people I want to see in a week. And that's a lot of people's psyche for me to intake in a week.
Well,
if you're seeing that many people in a day.
Part of the problem with medicine today is, amongst the few that we have, is overhead. And I'll be perfectly honest, for me to keep my doors open just so I, turn on the lights, pay my people, order supplies, it has
pay your malpractice.
Yeah, it costs about $50,000 a month to run my office.
It's a lot of money.
You can't see 30 people a week and pay that.
No.
I couldn't even pay that, let alone pay myself. So the problem is, part of the hamster wheel that we're on, one is people want to be seen and they need to be seen. And two, I think that we are, now else in the world, trying to pay our bills, and it's a bad system in that aspect as well. Because if medicine or insurance companies would reimburse based on time instead of volume, it would be a lot better. Because human nature, if you're getting paid more to sit with somebody and talk to them about stuff, you're going to sit with them and talk to them about stuff, But on the other end, people are busy too, and so some women that come in, if they have pelvic pain, they may just want something for the pain. They don't necessarily want to figure out why they have the pain, because that's going to take a lot of work,
Until the other approach doesn't work, and then they're left with the why.
Right, and I can tell you as a gynecologist, I have done many surgeries on women that were having lots of pain, and you go in and look, and there's nothing wrong, or at least that you can see organically. And so, it does serve a purpose in the sense that sometimes they feel better, but obviously not getting to the root cause of the problem.
Right, which is what we're all trying to aim for in our approach towards healthcare.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would hope most of us are. I think those of us in this arena are definitely trying to bring all those approaches together. And that's why, I like the avenue of integrative medicine, because integrative medicine to me is just, I joke about it, but it's integrating all of the other practices into what I do, and freely admitting that, my expertise is in women's health, but I have other avenues of people that I can refer to for neurological health, mental health, children, things like that. And so it's kind of corralling all those other providers together and having a team of experts that you can refer to.
I think that's part of the key here, is that you have your integrative approach, and then when you feel somebody needs something else, you have a really good team that you trust, that you can make referrals to.
Oh, exactly. It takes a long time to develop a team like that, too.
It does. It's not a 2-minute, I've just started my practice moment. It takes many years.
Agreed.
So before we end, if you could change one thing in the world right now in relation to women and how they take care of themselves and their families and live their lives, what would that be? Hard question.
It is a hard question because I only get one thing.
Well, you can have 2 things or 3 things.
No,
we don't have to be so literal here.
There is something that popped into my head when you said that, and I think it's societal. Obviously, women tend to get the short end of the stick in this patriarchal system that we have, but I wish women would change the dynamic that they are broken or that they are inferior, in the sense that my wife is a very strong woman. She's an OBGYN. She's super busy. She's a mom. She runs a business. She's a very, very strong person. And yet in that role as a strong female, I think you sometimes feel like, you're being the B word or other things if you're strong, or if you're not strong enough, then there's something wrong with you. And women tend to always be made to feel like if they're not perfect, they're broken, whether that be looks or the way they act, or how everything happens. And we know there's pay discrepancies and things like that. But a good story that I laugh about now, and my mom's gone, and I wish I could say more to her, but one of the things I think I would apologize for is when she was in her late 30s, she had a hysterectomy. And I remember there was one particular day, I'm sure there were many, but one particular day where she was particularly upset with me, and I was fairly convinced that the problem was her and not me, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, I said, because she had a hysterectomy, I said, "Hey, Mom, have you taken your pills yet?" Meaning her hormones, because I had been trained as a young man that anytime women were mad or upset, it was obviously their hormones. And my point is that maybe sometimes it's the people around you that are being jerks,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to blame everything on women's hormones. We don't ask guys like, hey, dude, you're kind of being crabby today. You know, for guys, we think they need a Snickers bar like the commercial says, but for women, it's got to be their hormones, you know. So sometimes I think it's okay to be human, and that's what I tell my patients, you know. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be happy or sad or whatever. It doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're a human being. And that's the one message I would like to send out.
So with that, we're going to end on that note. And Shawn, why don't you let people know how they can find you?
My website is www.Dr. Shawn Tassone, so DrShawnTassone.com. I have a pretty active Facebook presence. That's facebook.com/TassoneDoc, TASSONE DOC. And if they're on my website, I do have a new book coming out in June that's all about hormonal imbalances. And I talk about not just the hormones, but I talk about the energetic aspect of hormone imbalances from the concept of hormonal archetypes and how you can balance your hormones with my method called SHINES, which is spirituality, hormonal modulation, infoceuticals, nutrition, exercise, and a spiritual practice. So
wow,
be on the
that's
for
fantastic.
that.
I think that's a beautiful message. Thank you for that. I mean, that's really very powerful. So thank you so very much for your time,
Welcome.
Shawn. And this is Carol Lourie signing off.